Good morning. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Before starting the session today, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Luz Diaz Rios, and I am a senior agribusiness specialist at the World Bank. I will be collaborating today with AgriFin webinar series here at the World Bank's Agriculture Global Practice in Washington, D.C. I am happy to welcome everyone on behalf of the entire AgriFin team. For those of you joining for the first time, first of all, welcome. We are very happy that you could join us. To give you a quick background, the AgriFin webinar series invites agriculture finance professionals to share their insights and experience on various products and processes that work well in their respective markets. Today's theme focuses on financing coffee replanting. A few months back, we had here at AgriFin a talk on the experience of financing coffee replanting in Honduras. Today's talk will focus on Colombians' recent experience. I put together the case study on the subject that is included in the recent World Bank publication, Risk and Finance in the Coffee Sector, a compendium of case studies. Case study number 7 relates to the experience that we are going to analyze today. But while I told the story of the experience for the publication, the idea for the webinar today was to bring perspectives for the real actors themselves. We are going to hear perspectives by Mr. Andres Lozano Karanauskas and Mr. Santiago Silva Restrepo. We thank both of them for kindly accepting to share their experience with the rest of us today. Andres Lozano is advisor to the president of Banco Agrario in Colombia, a public bank for agribusinesses in Colombia. He also worked as advisor to the president of FINAGRO, a second-tier bank that provides credit guarantees and crop insurance subsidies, among others. During 7 years, he worked at the Colombian Coffee Growers Federation, one of the biggest rural producer organizations in the world. Santiago Silva Restrepo worked in the coffee sector first as a coffee market and policy analyst at the Colombia Coffee Growers Federation, and later as an economic advisor for the Ministry of Finance of Colombia. Currently, Santiago is an MBA dual degree student at New York University Stern School of Business and Wagner School of Public Service. Before we get started, I would like to make a few important announcements about the logistics. I will start by giving a brief, about 3 minutes background presentation, which will be followed by Andres' presentation of about 20 minutes, and then by Santiago's presentation for about 15 minutes. This will be followed by a Q&A session for about 20 minutes. You don't have to wait until the end to ask your questions. I encourage you to write your questions during the presentation in the chat box located in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. I will do my best to collect and ask all questions at the end of the presentation. The webinar will end promptly at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. One very important thing to remember is to keep your microphones muted throughout the entire webinar. This way we can ensure sound quality. This also applies during the Q&A session. We usually get over 50 participants. Today we have 30 people joining us. So we ask everyone to write down and speak their questions to avoid many people speaking at the same time. So let's get started. Well, I will start with a brief presentation. There is basically a few introductory remarks, setting the stage of what we are going to talk about. In this first slide, what we can see is basically what is the structure of the coffee sector in Colombia. As many other countries, coffee-producing countries, In Colombia, coffee production involves a large number of small holder producers. It's a very fragmented sector. The trends that we can see around the world are also common in Colombia, with a large number of smallholders participating, and the size of the plots getting smaller and smaller when we compare the 3 decades or 4 decades back. And at the right side of the screen, we have a map of Colombia and the different areas where coffee is produced in Colombia. It has been expanded in the last 2 decades, really. In the south and the north part of Colombia are really areas where production has been expanding dramatically. In the next slide, I'm borrowing this from TechnoServe. And this graph basically highlights what are the six distinctive aspects of Colombia's coffee supply chain. And at the farm level, we have harvesting occurs year-round. In the processing stages in Colombia, basically all farmers with mill at home and sell dry parchment. In most regions, there is no market for cherry. At the level of aggregation, we have the participation of the cooperatives, which very significantly in the processing stage, in the aggregation stage. And Colombia is one of the few countries that are perhaps the only one that has a purchase guarantee that exists at all aggregation points. At the exporting level, the producers, through their organization, have an important participation in the exports of coffee in Colombia. And we want also to highlight the level of organization. There is a strong institutional framework on the sector that has relevance for the discussion today. And basically what we are going to talk about today are 2 programs, replanting programs, 2 schemes. The first one is the competitiveness program that it was established in 1998 and was active until 2011. And the second program was the Permanent Sustainability and Future Program that started in 2007 and ended in 2014. What we want to understand, or what we would like to understand from the presentations today, is how Colombia moved from the situation that was characterizing the sector in 2006 with a relatively high proportion of all trades, 28% at that time, and 55% of Technify. When we talk about Technify, it's plantations that are grown at high densities and that are relatively very, very productive. So Colombia managed to change the landscape of production. In 2014, we see here that 82% of the coffee was Technify, and the proportion of all Technify was 14%, and we managed to reduce it. The Colombians managed to reduce the traditional and productive area significantly. Santiago is going to, Andres is going to focus basically in explaining the characteristics of the Permanent Sustainability and Future Program that was basically a loan scheme, considering that we are talking about financing. So that's basically the focus of Andres' presentation. The competitiveness program was more an input-based scheme that provided a monetary incentive that can be used by the producer to buy fertilizer. So Andres will talk about the PSF, that was basically a loan scheme that was very flexible, that involves incentives and guarantees, and that has very long-term repayment period and long-term grace period. So without further ado, we invite Andres to share with us the experience of the PSF program. Andres.
So, hi everyone. As Luz said, I worked for several years in the Coffee Growers Federation in Colombia, and from that experience, I will explain you how the permanence future and sustainability program was made. So, in 2007, as Luz said, most of the coffee, or a big part of the coffee area in Colombia, had old trees or had plots that were producing in a traditional way. Most of the Colombian coffee producers have small farms with less than 5 hectares. That is 7% of the coffee producers. And because of that, most of them live in poverty. The poverty is associated with a way of producing coffee. If you produce coffee in a plot that has maybe 4 hectares, and you do it in a technified way, the farmer would have the income to live properly. But if they produce with all trees, the income would be reduced in 70% or less. So the main objectives of the Permanent Sustainability and Future Program was to increase the well-being of coffee producers and their families by raising their income, to raise productivity in the coffee areas, thirdly, to increase the Colombian share of coffee production in the world, and fourthly, to increase the contribution made by coffee growers to the National Coffee Fund. The National Coffee Fund has the money to invest in the diverse program of the National Federation of Coffee Growers in Colombia, and every producer contributes with their money to it, and the money is paid at the moment of the export of the coffee. So that was as well of importance to increase the resources of this fund so that the National Federation of Coffee Growers could invest more in the coffee sector in Colombia. There were 3 main actors in this case. The first one is the producers' organization, that was the Colombian Coffee Growers Federation. The second one was the government, represented mainly by the Ministry of Agriculture and other 2 organizations. The first one is FINAGRO, that is a second-tier bank, and the second one is Banco Agrario, that is a public bank. And the third actor is the farmer that would do the replantation. So the Colombian Coffee Growers Federation lead and structure the program, and they structure the program with the incentives and subsidies that had already the Ministry of Agriculture. The Colombian Coffee Growers Federation as well had technical assistance that was providing to the farmers, and they decided to incorporate the technical assistance into this program, the replanting program. The Ministry of Agriculture was already providing a subsidy equal to 40% of the value of diverse projects in Colombia. What the Colombia Coffee Growers Federation did was to agree with the government that they would be providing these subsidies to the program designed by the Federation. So the Federation made an agreement with the Ministry of Agriculture about the size of the budget for this subsidy. Since the program was big, it was clear that it would need high amounts of money. And the Colombian Coffee Growers Federation also agreed with the Ministry of Agriculture the conditions for farmers to obtain this subsidy. FINAGRO is a mixed entity. The majority of it is public, and FINAGRO provides guarantees to farmers so that farmers can access to credit. The guarantee of FINAGRO is about 80% of the value of the credit. What the Federation did was to provide an additional guarantee for about 20% of the value of the credit. So in the end, farmers that would like to access to credit would have 100% guarantee for their credit. That would make banks, commercial banks and public banks eager to provide those credits because they already would have all the collateral they needed. Finally, we can see that there was the Banco Agrario. There were many commercial banks providing credit, but in the end was Banco Agrario, the main bank providing these credits to farmers. What the Federation we did with Banco Agrario and other banks was to determine the amount of the credit, the disbursement schedule, and the scheme of the amortization of the credit. The Federation helped the coffee growers with the paperwork in filling all the formats of the credit. They also provided technical assistance in the plots of the farmers. And finally, they paid the interest of the credit with the money of the National Coffee Fund. There was some characteristics of the program also in relation with the plot. So because this was a big program, not all the area could be replanted at the same time. So there was a cap for replanting. The maximum area replanted per farm would be 1.5 hectares, that is 3.7 acres. The replanting density should be find following the advice of the Extension Service of the Federation. So farmers should have a high density in their coffee areas so that they would be able to increase productivity. There are two different ways to renew a coffee plot. The first one is to cut the trees. By cutting the trees, a new tree will grow with high productivity, but when you cut the trees, you're not able sometimes to increase the density of the plot. So replanting in this case was mandatory, and the farmers were not able to renew their plantations by cutting the trees. At the beginning, all the Arabica varieties were accepted. Arabica is the variety grown in Colombia, is the only one accepted, and there are mainly two different Arabica varieties in Colombia. The one is resistant to the coffee rust. The other one, mainly Caturra, is not resistant to the coffee rust, but many farmers like this variety. So at the beginning, all varieties were accepted. It was not only after 2 years that the coffee rust disease attacked Colombia that the federation, in agreement with the government, decided that only varieties resistant to the coffee rust would be accepted in the program. Finally, the objective was to renew 300,000 hectares in 5 years. That was a challenging objective for the program. How were the loans made? How was the scheme? So, in order to renew their plots, the amount of the credit was calculated according to the value of the replanting project. However, the disbursement were not planned to fulfill all the characteristics of the replanting project, but were planned to fulfill the needs of the farmers. So their needs was to have one first big disbursement equal to the value of the inputs. With these inputs and the labor provided by the family, by the coffee growers family, they will renew the plantation. And with the rest of the 19 disbursements, the family would have the income that they were losing by renewing the plantation. So when the family decided to renew the plantation, they would have 2 years without earnings, without income. So with this 19 disbursement, the family would have the income to fulfill their needs. The repayment was planned in 7 years with 2 first years of grace. This is okay. This is how the program looks like. In the first figure, we can see the renewed areas. If you can see, in 2007, the federation and the government began with this project, with this program. But in 2007, the federation was not able to increase the areas replanted in comparison with 2006. In 2008 and 9, the federation tried much harder to renew more areas, but it was not until 2010 that the federation began to reach its goal of 60,000 hectares replanted. And as we can see, in 2011 and 2012, the program was totally successful, reaching almost 90,000 hectares replanted each year. This had an impact in the technification of the coffee area. That was something that Luz explained, and we can see that it moved from 57% of the coffee area technified in 2007 to 82 in 2014. It was expected that the replantation program would have an impact on production, and indeed it had. But what we see in this figure is the exports of coffee of Colombia, and we see a, a decrease, a marked decrease between 2008 and 2009. This was the result of the replanting program, but also of the attack of the coffee rust disease. Another thing that came was difficulties with the climate. That was a year that was too rainy and didn't help the coffee trees to have a high productivity. So we have these three factors, but of importance was that when the federation saw that the coffee rust was coming, they decided to do the replanting program only with resistant varieties. Finally, we see that in 2013 and 2014, the exports of coffee increased. Now, the exports of coffee are in a higher level than the 10 years before the program. Although I can say that the program was successful, reaching its goals, it had several difficulties that I explained here. The first one is that it was not easy to start the program, as you see before in the figures. The federation, it took 3 years for the federation to begin to reach its goal. So this, when you have a big population and you want to reach all the regions of a country, it is not easy to do it all from a sudden. It takes time to learn what you have to do. It takes time to reach the people. It takes time for you to convince the people to join a renovation program like this one. A second difficulty was that the initial amount of the credit needed to replant the plots. This initial amount that was calculated was not enough for the farmers to replant their plots and to maintain their income. So, in the end, the federation had to increase this amount, but this had two consequences. The first one was that the National Coffee Fund didn't have the budget to pay the interest for these new credits because they were based in a higher amount. And the second one was that Cafe, that was the fund providing the additional guarantees for the credit, these additional 20% guarantees for the credit, had not enough money to provide all these guarantees. The other thing that was difficult was that the disbursement scheme was not maintained since the operative work for the federation was too complex. As in many programs, some producers manifested that they didn't want to work with the FNC, and the other difficulty was that the FNC was not able to reach all the regions in Colombia. However, the FNC was able to reach the main coffee regions, almost all coffee regions in Colombia. The other one, I explained it before. Finally, there were many farmers with an age, well, they were old. So when a farmer is old, even if it has strong incentives to join a program, maybe they don't have, they don't want to to join the program because they are already old. They want to rest a little bit more. And well, finally, it happened that the coffee rust came, and the climate affected the production as well. That ended in manifestations in the streets of Colombia that put the federation in big difficulties. So in the end, the climate affectation, the coffee rust, and the replanting program had consequences in production and as well in the income of many farmers that in the end were not happy with this reduction of production. So I have here 3 key elements for success that I think are the most important ones. The first one was that the FNC implemented a program taking advantage of the subsidies that were already provided by the government. What the FNC did was to structure a program using what the government was already providing. So that made that the program could begin in a much faster way. The second key element was that the extension service, the technical assistance of the Federation, was able to help the farmers, many of them literate, with all the paperwork, and they were able as well to go to the farms, provide the technical assistance, and tell the farmers how to be more productive and how to get the money to be more productive. The third key element was that there was a joint effort made by the Federation, the government, and the coffee growers to have a successful program. With this, I end with my presentation, and I hope you could learn a little bit about it.
Thank you very much, Andres, for the very clear presentation. We invite now Santiago Silva to share with us the results of the study that he led in relation to the impact of the impacts of these replanting programs. Meanwhile, we invite everybody to submit the questions, clarifications, and so that we will have them ready to be answered after the presentation of Santiago. Santiago, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So basically, I'm gonna tell you about my experience leading the impact evaluation, as Luz said. I was in that time an economic advisor in Coffee Matters for the Ministry of Finance when I lead this project. And that was in 2012. So why in that time? So let me tell you a little bit. When I arrived to the government, one of the problems of these programs is that it takes time to see the result in the production. So because most of the results that the government usually expect are in the short term, it was difficult to argue in the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Agriculture that we should keep funding this type of programs in the long term because they were expecting results in the production, and everyone was complaining about the low production at that time. And one of the things that Andres will say is that this process was self-reinforcing with the problems of coffee roast. So you don't only have a decay of production due to the coffee roast, but also because you are taking out hectares of productive hectares from the production capabilities of the country. So when I arrived to the government, there was a lot of people were criticizing the programs and saying that we should not fund it again. So what I came out and I say, well, if everyone thinks this is not producing any results, let's try to evaluate the impact of the program in other variables that are proxies to production. So if there are, or if there is, if we found any positive impact in this proxies of production, then we will expect that soon the production will increase. So in order to start with these are basically the renovated hectares between 2006 and 2012. The 2012 is only until September, so actually it was a little bit more, the total number of hectares renovated, but I think the peak was in 2011. You can see here the blue one is the PSF, and the green that is kind of brown is competitiveness. So competitiveness, I just want to go a little bit deep in this part of competitive. It was not a cash transfer per tree necessarily. No, they have every tree that you renovate, then you will receive some money that you can only use to buy fertilizers. So in the practice, it was a transfer of fertilizers, but it was demand driven. So if you think about this, so those coffee growers that will renew more trees will receive more subsidy or more fertilizer. So that was a bias in the program, and one of the reasons why the program stopped in 2011. Having said this, we're gonna talk about three things very quickly today. So what was the data? What was the data that we analyzed? What was the methodology that we used to evaluate the program? And what were the results? And these results were in 2012 when the production is still very low, or relatively very low. So the data was came from the FNC. The FNC has an information system called SICA. The SICA was built based in a census that was finished by the end of 2006, and from 2007 it had to store like panel data about information of different units of analysis. They have information of 20 departments, 583 municipalities, and around 500,000 coffee growers. Also, 1.8 production units, which basically are like lots. And the FNC constantly update the SICA through the extension service. The unit of analysis of our study was the coffee grower. So we wanted to see the impact on the plantation of each coffee grower. So basically, we identified 4 possible variables that will determine future production. One was density, so number of trees per hectare. The other was the age of the tree, because younger trees will be more productive. The other was young technified area in coffee. This was very important because the technified plantation is defined not only for the density, also for the age, but also for the variety of coffee that you have in your farm. So if it is Castillo variety, if it is a short variety, because there are large or tall varieties and short varieties. Short varieties are usually more productive. Usually are the ones who are resistant to coffee rust and stuff like that. So that makes a young technified area, or young technified area in coffee. And finally, the total area in coffee, because although this was not the intention of any of the programs, you would imagine that if you are giving a kind of subsidy of any kind, you are decreasing the cost of production for the grower, So they will have more income available to either buy other things, or they can reinvest in the farm and increase their area in coffee. So if this is a good business and this makes sense for the people, they will take part of that money and increase their area in coffee. So if the area in coffee was growing, then you will have also more production. Also, we have some treatment variables that you will imagine will be if the coffee growers participate in PSF or not, or if they participate in competitiveness or not between 2008 and 2011, because the baseline was 2007. And of course, we identified some variable, some control variables. But yeah, it's all. Some of them obviously are density, age, hectares by coffee tree type, and other stuff like that. We also have a variable that is called ecotopo, that is an environmental variable that is a mixture of weather condition, land condition, and stuff like that. So now let me talk very quickly about the methodology. We use two methodologies. The first methodology was to create a propensity score matching in double differences. What does this mean? It means that basically when we take the half million coffee growers and we identify who were the beneficiaries of the program and who were not, you cannot compare beneficiaries with not compare the beneficiaries, because statistically they were different. They were different people. So with the propensity score matching, basically what we did was to identify a twin for each coffee grower that participated in the variable. And once we did that, we were able to compare. The other methodology, and I think it's one of the most like the nicest result of this, is that when you run a regression, any regression, or OLS at least, what you are getting is an effect on the mean coffee grower. So the first methodology will give us what was the effect on the average coffee grower, but in the universe of coffee growers are coffee growers who are more technified and less technified, those who are less well off and those who are better well off, right? So the quantitative regression allows to see what was the effect of the program in those coffee growers that were less well off, like the quantile, the 0.5 quantile or the 95 quantile, or percentile if you want to see it that way. So this was very nice, because the whole soul of these programs in a universe of coffee growers that are very small, as Luz mentioned, and Andres as well, that they are relative not rich people. They have very 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 small plantations. The policy objective of this program was to have a bigger impact in those who were less well off. If the program was the other way around, then you might reconsider the program if your objective of policy is to improve the well-being of the less well off. If it is only improving production, maybe because the 95 percentile generate 30% of the production of the country, maybe you should just focus in those people, and then you will increase the production. So what were the results? So the results in the mean coffee grower. So let me talk first about PSF. So PSF increased the density of the tree density between 7.2% and 7.4% in those between 2007 and 2011. The tree age decreased between 5.7 years and 5.8 years per hectare. the technified area increased by around 40%. That's an impressive result. And finally, and which was and this was very important because this was not the objective of the program, the total area in coffee increased between 18% and 24%. The total area in coffee that each coffee grower had. Then we see competitiveness. So in competitiveness, we see similar results in terms of they were positive, but in lower magnitude. The tree density, for example, increased only between 0.35% and 1.28%. The tree age only decreased around 2 years. The technified area also increased, but around 22%. And finally, total area, it has a large increase between 10 and 14%. This was very important if you think about it. What I said before, that this program was demand driven, because if you renew more, then you will receive more subsidy or more fertilizers. Then it means that only those coffee growers that were capable to finance their renovation by themselves at first, then they will be eligible for this program, which means that you have to either have the resources or just or go and look for yourself for the credit for renovation, which also have other implications, that you have to have your own collateral and all the stuff that PSF were offering for those that were very small. So this means that at the end, competitiveness was a program that ended in the hands of the biggest of the largest producers. And how can we prove that? Like we find evidence of that when we did the quantile regression. So in the quantile regression, the local effects, we find larger positive effects on both programs over the coffee growers with lower technification levels. So if you were less technified, the impact of each program was higher than if you were like super technified. On the other hand, the results in the were in line with at the end. The results were concentrated in larger farmers in terms of competitiveness, and that's not only the experience of Colombia. When I did this study, we found evidence of this in Vietnam and India with other programs of fertilizers, and well, it as well happened in Colombia. The other thing that we find evidence that was very interesting was that through credit programs, every time you give a credit incentive or you promote credit or access to credit or loans, people usually expand their business, so they grow, and we also find this in PSF. The people not only renew their plantation, but they grow their plantation. So with that will be the main results. If anyone wants to see the paper or is curious about the data, I can share with you a longer presentation and stuff like that. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope you find this very exciting as I found it.
Thank you, Santiago. Thank you very, very much to you and Andres for the very great presentations. We will now open the session for questions. We have several questions that are coming, but it seems there are some participants that are sending them directly to the speakers. So Santiago and Andres, please check your chat and see if you have questions there for you that we cannot see from here. But we have here one presentation that is basically addressed to Andres. This is what is in the program for the guarantors, in this case for FINAGRO, Foga Café. What is in need for the guarantors of these coffee farmers is the first question. The second one is, what has been the default rate and how easy has these guarantees been claimed?
If I understand well, the first question is what is the income of the guarantors, or why?
No. What is the benefit for the guarantors of how did they benefit of participating in this program?
Okay.
And the other question is, what has been the default rate and how easy has been these guarantees being claimed?
Okay, the first one, as said, FINAGRO is a second-tier bank, and it manages a public fund that is the Fondo Agropecuario de Garantías. This public fund doesn't benefit for providing those guarantees. Actually, the cost of the guarantee now is 1.5% of the value of the credit. However, the cost of providing those credits is about 5%. So there is a subsidy involved in providing those guarantees. On the other hand, Focacafe is also a fund that is nursed by the resources of the National Coffee Fund, I think, and they don't charge any money for providing those credits. So these two funds doesn't have a big income from providing those credits. So they only have losses. And when the program began, coffee growers were very good payers, so they were paying their credits well. At that time, I think the loss rate was about between 4 and 5%. Now is about 7%, but this is not that has nothing to do with the program. It's something happening with all the agricultural sector in Colombia.
I have two questions. Shall I read them or?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Santiago.
So I have two questions. Someone asked me that why the replanting efforts only been successful after 2010, and what were the limiting factors in previous years. So basically, the replanting efforts were successful before. The origin of the competitiveness program was to sustain the production levels, because the federation knew and the government knew that the production, even though there are a large number of small producers, the production, like more than I don't know, 60% of the production or something like that, like a large percentage of the production is concentrated only in 20% of the coffee growers, or 25% of the coffee growers who are the larger. So competitive was thought for creating incentives for these coffee growers to keep renewing their plantations, so the production will be sustainable. However, what was the problem? By 2006 and 2007, when the Niña phenomenon came, a lot of the hectares that were renovated before were not with resistant varieties. So that affect a lot the problem. and we have a Niña phenomenon, then a Niño phenomenon, and then a Niña phenomenon again. And the problem with the Niño phenomenon is also that the production is affected if the Niño phenomenon lasts enough, like what apparently is happening right now. So I think the limiting factors of the previous years was that there was not this vision or this policy objective of making the coffee park or the coffee plantation resistant to coffee rust. That was not a priority. And the other thing was that once we understood that was a priority, it was too late, or not too late, but it was late enough so when we start this change, already the production fell.
Okay, the second question, there is another one here. What was the cost of the renovation program per hectare?
So I have a data in mind, but I don't know if Andres has a better number. If I remember well, it cost around 4.5 million pesos per hectare to renovate, but it depends on some conditions, in some conditions of the renovation, obviously.
It will be around.
It will be like a $1,500 probably at the exchange rate today.
Yeah, it will be around nearly 2,000 per hectare, something like that.
Okay, so what happened was that at the beginning, the cost of the renovation calculated by the Federation was about 4.5 million pesos. And after some years, they increased that amount between 6 and 8 million. So it was a high increase in the amount of the credit. So it moved from 2 to almost $3,000
per hectare. Perfect. We have several questions here. Let's see. Okay, from where did the rush-tolerant varieties of coffee came from? Who provided them?
Who provided what? The coffee rust?
The varieties resistant to rust, coffee rust.
They were created by Senicafe.
We have here, has the change in income levels of the farmers from before the renovation program been measured?
Yes, actually, in my paper, I did a proxy of that, but I have my data is from 2012, so it wouldn't be not relevant today. But if I can share with you that result right now. Like for PSF, the annual income of a coffee grower increased between 0.6 million pesos to 2.3 million pesos per year. That will be between $200 per year to $800 for PSF. And for
per hectare.
Yes, that is per hectare. And for from competitiveness, it was between the economic effect was very similar. It was between 0.6. It was between $200 and $800 as well.
You want? Okay. We have implemented a small coffee renovation program in Nicaragua that does not make use of subsidies. Could this have been done in Colombia without subsidies?
Well, I want to take this answer. I think subsidies provide strong incentives to replant the plots. So when you provide subsidies, you're giving incentives to do something. What I sometimes think is that not all the subsidies in Colombia were needed. So what you see in Colombia is that at the beginning of the program, the federation was paying for the interest of the credits, and after some years, they stopped to pay for those interests. And what happened as well was that all the coffee growers knew the program, and they joined the program even knowing that the federation was not paying the interest anymore. So you can see there that not all the subsidies were needed.
I want to add to that. Let me go back to the graph that I showed at the beginning, and there is important point here to see. If you see the years 2011 and 2012, in 2011 when you sum the green bar, the two green bars, it gives you around 61,000 hectares renovated by competitiveness and other resources. That was the other resources is basically like coffee grower own credits, like own loans, right? So and when you see the green bar in 2012, it's 65,000. So look that when we ended the competitive program, people who are businessmen basically, like are more dignified, that as I told you, the competitiveness program was biased to them, or was more these people took more advantage of this program. They, in any case, they renovate almost the same number of hectares. So you can think that these people who manage their farm, who are larger farmers and manage their farms as a businessman, basically they have already interiorized the cost of renovating, and they will renovate even without the subsidy. However, the blue bar, that is the PSF, that was oriented to the less well-off coffee growers, then that is a question mark. You don't know, and actually, but in the time, as Andres told the condition of PSM change, and that might also have a change the demand might affect the demand for PSF. I cannot assure that because I haven't run an evaluation of that. But the thing is, those people who is less well off is less willing to reinvest in their plantation, and the reason is very simple. Look, these farmers only have 1.8 hectares on average, which means that they cannot survive with the only from coffee. They have either other plantations in their farms, or they sell their labor around their farm. So actually, they live from working in other farms. So coffee is only an additional income. So if it is if 1 year comes with a large production, perfect. If it doesn't, okay, it doesn't matter because I live from other things. While the businessman, one of their main revenue streams is the coffee. So yeah, that would be the thing I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Let's see the last question. We have several questions that we can unfortunately take on because of the time constraint, but let's see the next question, or the last question, would be, what was the average interest rate paid by coffee farmers?
So the average interest rate in Colombia for those farmers is around 10% annually.
For in the scheme, as
yes.
part of the scheme. Okay, perfect.
Yes, but at the beginning, the National Coffee Fund was paying these interest rates.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we have a few questions here that we can perhaps address to Andres and Santiago separately, and perhaps share some insights in an email or something that we will send to everybody. But right now we just have to end here. And we would really like to thank Andres and Santiago for sharing his insights and experience on their insights and experience on these replanting schemes. Before and to everybody that joined us today and everybody for participating, joining us. On behalf of the AgriFin team, thanks everybody. And before signing off, I would like to ask everybody to let us know what you thought about today's webinar by filling out a brief survey appearing on the screen right now. In the meantime, if you have any remaining questions, please visit AgriFin's website and www.agrifin.org or send us an email. Thanks again to everybody, and we hope to have you in the next webinar. Thanks very much, and have a great day. Bye-bye.